Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, tonight I'm going to be talking about Valor Knights, the Echo Cube War, put out by Bloat Games. So, if you're familiar with my channel at all, you'll notice that I'm a really big fan of Bloat Games and the number of RPGs that he has put out. And to just give you a quick view, the first game of Bloat Games that I became aware of was Survive This Zombies 2nd edition. And when I backed this as a Kickstarter, I got the first edition along with it. So this is your zombie apocalypse RPG. Then I discovered Dark Places and Demogorgons from Bloat Games, and this is your 1980s Kids on Bikes RPG. So this is basically they're going out and discovering all of these strange things going on in their small town. From there, I went with Vigilante City, and so this is Bloat Games Supers, basically a role-playing game for playing superheroes in a city setting that he has created, known as Vigilante City. And the unique thing about all of these games so far is that they're completely compatible with one another. So you can take characters from Survive This Zombies and bring them into the Dark Places and Demogorgons setting or into the Vigilante City setting. You then have The Blackest of Deaths, which is a dark, much more brutal version of a fantasy role-playing game. And so it is, it is a game designed to really challenge your characters and most likely kill them. And so that is, that is part of the appeal of this game as well. And so far, all of the games that I've mentioned are all using basically the same game mechanic. And so multiple genres, same game mechanic, and completely interchangeable or intermixing with each of these games. He does have one game that's built out for, it's a supplement. It's a military space setting for DCC. So that's Dungeon Crawl Classics, and this is Operation Bug Hunt. And so this is one game that kind of breaks away a little bit from his system, and it kind of a meld with the DCC RPG. And he also has put out a couple of these little zines. So this is the Isle of the Amazons, and it's a very rules light, self-contained little adventure that you can play here as well. So as you can see, all of these, various titles are interchangeable and intermixable as far as using one system to be used across many different genres. And so that's why, and I'm sure some people might argue, this point. That's why I started thinking of Bloat Games as being the new GURPS. GURPS was a game system in the 1980s, put out by Steve Jackson Games, where it was one game system that you saw repeated over and over again throughout many different genres. And that's where I see Bloat Games really shining in the big field of OSR games right now. So, so here we're going to take a look at Valor Knights. So Valor Knights is, once again, I think Eric is kind of young to be like a kid of the 80s, but he certainly has a great affinity for that time period, because this is essentially mechs that pose as vehicles on present-day Earth, and they are the survivors of a civil war on an alien planet, And of course, they're coming here, and there's two factions, and one is the Valor Knights, and the other faction, and it's just slipping my mind for the second, is the Chaos Lords. So here you have mechs fighting out their civil war here on Earth, and they take the form of different. It's basically Transformers. All right, and before I go to the PDF and go through it, the one minor negative that I have for this, and I already talked to Eric Bloat about this, is that, believe it or not, the cover, on this softback is actually a little too thick. And that's my only complaint about it, is that it does make it hard to flip through the individual pages without getting hung up on the very heavy duty cover. But that set aside, if that's the only problem with it, it's it's not a real big deal anyway. And as you can see, the cover art, and you'll see when I go through the PDF itself, the interior art is phenomenal. So let me switch views and go right to the PDF. So here we have the PDF. So Valor Knights, the Electric Cube War by Bloat Games. And here we have the game design is by Eric Bloat. The art is by Phil Stone. The layout is by Phil Stone and edited by Eric Bloat. This is based on the Blackest of Death system, but it is also influenced by Black Hack by David Black. As you can see, the art is really, I love this style of the black and white, heavily shaded art. Goes into a brief backstory, and basically it's the story of Transformers. So if you're familiar with the Transformers franchise, you'll be familiar with this this storyline as well. I'm going to go into, he goes into basically what is an RPG, and we can skip over that for now, because if you're following this channel, you're pretty well aware of RPGs, and we don't need to go over the basics. But if you are brand new, I am going to focus on a few pages of this that will help you understand this game system very well. So one of the things that Eric Bloat does well with his game layout and his the booklets themselves is that he has these reference pages that you can easily print out if you have the PDF, and keep these on the side. And they're very quick reference charts to show you how the game system works. And so here you have the rules for everyone, characters and NPCs. There's the basic mechanic, or the core mechanic here. And you're rolling 2 dice simultaneously. You're rolling a d20 and a d6. The d20 is your check against the difficulty setting of the task that you're trying to do. And so basically your difficulty setting, let's say it's a 10, it's an easy task. On a d20 plus your modifiers, you're trying to match a 10 or exceed it. The d6 is the variable between either a hindrance or a benefit. And so when you roll a d6, a 2, 3, and 4 is ignored. A 1 is a hindrance, and a 6 is a benefit. And so you could still be successful on your roll and still encounter a hindrance, or you could fail your roll and still have some kind of a benefit. And it's really up to the GM to think about, well, if this was a success but with a hindrance, what does that look like? How am I going to describe that to the player? Or if it's a success and a benefit on top of that, how do you really exemplify that that event So not only were you successful, but you were, vastly successful. And it describes hindrances and benefits and advantage and disadvantage. So advantage is when you're rolling 2d20s and 2d6s simultaneous and you're taking the highest of the result or the better of the results. And disadvantage is when you're rolling 2d20 and 2d6 and you're taking the lower of the results or the more negative of the results. So please excuse my coughing. It's the height of hay fever and other allergies. So the attributes, these are the basic 6 attributes that are the hallmark of all OSR games. When you see these attributes being applied to characters in a game, you know that you're dealing with a fairly old school inspired game. And so we have the same 6 attributes that we see in many games here, but the attributes are handled a little bit differently here. They're just generating a modifier. And so when we roll the 66 to determine your 6 attributes, you're not going to write a 6 for an attribute. You're going to write a +3. Or you're not going to write a 1, you're going to write the -2. And then attributes can be raised or lowered based on class bonuses or racial bonuses, but you can't exceed a 3. You can exceed a 3, but you cannot go below a -2. So a -2 is the exact bottom of that. There is luck, there is healing, there are hit points, there is death in this game. Basically, death is when you come down to a 0 or below, your character is dead. If you have luck points, you can roll a d20, and if you roll a natural 20, your character will be revived with just 1 hit point. If you have multiple luck points, you can keep on expending them until your luck points are gone. And at that point, your character is dead if you still haven't rolled a natural 20. There's evasion and armor points and damage points and saving throws and skills, leveling up. Leveling up is done a little bit differently here. So at the end of each gaming session, you roll a d10. And if the number rolled is higher than your current level, you will level up. So all first level characters are going to have a 90% chance of leveling up after their first adventure. And leveling up is across the board. You're going to gain +1 attribute point, a +1 luck point, a +1 to your evade score, and +1 to your hit dice. It is a turn-based system. There are initiative rolls, so initiative is d6 plus your dex score modifier, so very, very common system for that. There's rules on movement and such, their relative distances, and then hit dice and hit points and how that system works. Here is one of those pages that I was talking to you about where you're going to want to print this out and have this off to the side. So this is the game master's advice, and this is the core mechanics of the game. And so it talks about the core mechanics, the rolling of the d20 and the d6. It talks about the outcomes of the core mechanics. So there are 6 possible outcomes when using this core mechanic. There's success with a benefit, there's success with a hindrance, there's failure with a benefit, failure, and then failure with a hindrance. You can also think of this as when adjudicating the rolls yes and, or yes but, or no and, when you're describing the action that takes place. Setting the target difficulties. An easy difficulty setting is a 10. So on a d20, you have to match or be higher than a 10. A 15 becomes a medium challenging or a medium challenge. A 20 is obviously difficult. It means that you need to roll a 20 or better. Now there's going to be modifiers and such to these rolls, so but it's still a difficult challenge to meet a 20. And then nearly impossible is is a 25. When you're making attempts at doing something, the GM is going to try to determine what is the best attribute, and so its modifier that would apply to the task that the player is trying to attempt. Character creation, once again, another quick cheat sheet for the player this time, so they can see what page number they want to go to know about attributes, to know about luck, to know about their hit points and evade, and determining their armor points, and then choosing class. There's a leader of each group, so there's always a leader of each group, and that group's leader is going to gain certain advantages for being the leader of the group. So leading by example, and so leader has a pool of damage dice of d8s equal to their HD. So they might have an additional d8 if they're only level 1. They might have multiple if they're level 4. They're going to have 4 additional d8s. When making an attack, distribute any number of these damage dice among any number of nearby targets. For each target the player assigned that damage dice, the player must come up with an exciting and bespoke narration for the attack. And so they are going to get an additional attack damage to that target, but they have to explain why and what it looks like and what's going on with that. It goes into further detail about the leadership matrix, then details plasma melee weapons, rallying the troops. So leader hand shifts inside the arm and plasma-shaped melee weapon appears. So these are special abilities that the leader has, and then rallying their troops. The warrior is the character class, and it goes through and gives the character class details that you see here. So they get plus 6 at first level. Their hit die is a d10, so they'll have a total of 16 hit points of 16 hit points, plus any constitution bonuses they may have. Their armor points are 4 AP unless they have a shield. Then it'll be 5. Their attack damage is a d10. Their attribute bonuses, they get a +1 to strength or dexterity, and a -1 to intelligence or wisdom. And so there's some flexibility. And as a mech, they are between 16 and 20 feet tall. They can double attack. They have plasma weapons, suggested weapon shapes. They can have a variety of weapon shapes here. They generate an ion shield for protection. The support class only gets +2 at first level to hit points. They have a d6 hit point, a d6 die for their hit points or levels. Only 3 AP, 4 with shield. Only do d6 damage. They have a +1 wisdom and intelligence and a -1 to constitution. They're between 12 and 16 feet tall. The suggested vehicle forms, they're ambulances, fire vehicles, rescue vehicles, police cars, SWAT vans, tow trucks, etc. So basically support type vehicles. They have repair, force field, and they generate an ion shield. And here you have an example of one of those support mechs. You have the mini-bot, +4 to first level hit points, d4 for hit die, armor points only 2, 3 with a shield, attack is only d4. Their attribute bonus is a +1 to dexterity and charisma, a -1 to constitution. They're very small in comparison, only 8 to 12 feet tall. Suggested vehicle types, the Volkswagen Bug, the Mini Cooper, the Smart Car, compact cars, and so on, mopeds, motorcycles. They're hard to target due to their small size. They're lucky, and they generate an ion field. Every one of these generates an ion field. So here you have the Chaos Lords versus the Valor Knights, and it goes through some of the details here of dealing damage to characters and how this system works. So this is a quick and dirty option for dealing NPC damage to characters. These here in the parentheses are the average if you wanted to just, instead of rolling, dish out the hit points of damage. So a 1 hit die NPC would do 2 hit points of damage rather than rolling a d4. 3 if they're level 2, 4 if they're level 3, and so on. And then once you get to these higher levels, you'll have 7 or 8. 7 is a 2d8 or an 8, 3d6 or a 9. At level 10, the maximum is a d10 plus a d12, or you can just use an 11 as a flat base damage done. So here you have the bad guys. I almost said Decepticon, but here you have the bad guys. And it goes through, and here's an example of a leader. All right, so Ultra Bomber. He takes the form of a B-1 bomber. It shows you here his strength is a +3, his dexterity is a 2, his luck, his intelligence is a 1, his charisma, constitution is a 0, his wisdom is a 2, his charisma is a 3. So you can see he's, strong and charismatic. That's what makes him a leader, or at least one of the qualities of a leader. You see he has 7 luck points, so quite a bit of luck points involved here. And he can rally his troops. He can use a plasma weapon. For example, he leads by example. That's an ability. He is merciless. He does not care for the safety and well-being of his own troops. All right, so this is a pretty, bad guy, let alone for that of the humans or the Valor Knights. He is solely focused on collecting electro cubes and draining the earth of every last valuable resource it has. So this is the main bad guy that everyone has to face as their characters, as their part of the Valor Knights. And it gives a whole entourage of lesser NPCs on the bad guy side. And then random background d20. So you can roll this d20 here, or d12 I mean, d12, and we'll give them some personality traits that might be interesting. So as you can see, I will go back to the beginning here. It is a very kind of a rules light system, which is very common amongst all of Bloat Games. So once again, I really enjoy Bloat Games RPGs. You can see they're very simple systems to learn and to use. They're high quality books that he's been producing here. Covers many different genres, and I know he has something coming out soon, which will be Survive This Fantasy, and I think that Kickstarter is getting ready to begin very soon. So if you're interested, you can find all of these on DriveThruRPG. Just link through the channel description, this video's description. You can link through, and my channel is an affiliate of RPG, which means I do get a small amount back, usually like 15 cents or so, back for each of the purchases that are done, and then I take that and I purchase other RPGs from DriveThru that I then show off here on the channel. It's one of the reasons why I run this channel is I like to give these small developers, a blast out there so that other people can become familiar with their games and check them out. So that's why my channel focuses on so many different RPGs that are out there, and of the 300 or so, the 300 or so uploads that I have on this channel, there's probably 100 or more are different games. And so it's something that I really want to continue doing, is to keep on letting you all see these games as they're coming out from a variety of different developers. But I do have some of my favorites, and Bloat Games is certainly one of mine. So once again, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, well, please consider subscribing. Hit that alert bell so that you'll see when my new uploads are coming. With being kind of on lockdown, and with the upcoming weeks of unknowing what's going to happen, when we'll be able to get our freedom of movement back, I will be putting out more videos more frequently than I had been. And please, if you're out there, for our first responders and for our nurses and for all the people that are out there really trying to get a handle on this crisis, thank you. You're doing noble work out there. And for those of you who are sick, get well soon. Hopefully everything will clear up within a matter of a couple of weeks, or at the most a month or so. But if it doesn't, just hang in there. And thoughts and prayers are out there for everybody to stay healthy. I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. You all enjoy the rest of your the rest of the weekend and the upcoming week. And just be safe out there and be healthy. Have a good night.